My father kicked me and my mother out of Thanksgiving dinner, until she pulled out documents proving she owned their entire neighborhood. Take a quick pause, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching this from. It's amazing seeing this community grow across the world. The scent of roasted turkey filled my father's dining room, but the warmth stopped there. I'm Stephanie, 28 years old, standing in my childhood home feeling like an uninvited stranger. My mother, Lorraine, gripped my hand as my father's new wife, Candace, looked us up and down like we'd tracked dirt across her precious marble floors. "You're late," my father, Gilbert, said coldly. "Not, 'Happy Thanksgiving, baby girl.' Not even a hug. Just that cutting tone I'd grown to expect over the past 3 years since he remarried. Traffic on the expressway was terrible, I explained, forcing a smile. But we brought sweet potato pie, your favorite. We already have dessert, Candace interrupted, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She wore a burgundy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Homemade, not store-bought. My mother's pie was legendary. Homemade from scratch. But I bit my tongue. The dining room was packed with Candace's family. Her 3 sisters, their husbands, her parents, and my father's brother, Uncle Ashton, who at least gave me a genuine smile. My half-brother, little Jordan, barely 5 years old, ran around in a tiny suit that matched our father's. "Can we sit down?" Mom asked quietly. Her voice had that careful tone, the one she'd used for years trying to keep peace. Dad gestured vaguely toward 2 chairs squeezed at the far end of the table, practically in the kitchen doorway. Not the seats of honor. Not even close to him. We were afterthoughts. Candace clinked her glass. "Before we eat, I want to thank everyone for coming to our home for this beautiful celebration. Our home. The house where I'd grown up. Where my mother had planted roses. Where I'd learned to ride my bike." I felt Mama squeeze my hand under the table. "Stay calm," she whispered. But I was already burning inside. Candace's sister, Regina, leaned forward with a sharp smile. "Lorraine, Gilbert told us you're renting now? In Riverside? That's such a developing area." The way she said developing meant run down. My mother's jaw tightened. "It's a nice neighborhood. Close to my job at the hospital. A nurse, right?" Regina continued. "How sweet. Blue-collar work is so important." I wanted to throw my water in her face. My mother was a surgical nurse with 26 years of experience. She'd saved lives while Regina posted selfies for a living as an influencer. "Actually, I started." "Stephanie works in marketing," Dad interrupted, but his tone suggested I sold snake oil. "Some social media thing." "Digital brand strategy," I corrected. "I manage campaigns for." "Oh, how modern," Candace's mother, Diane, said dismissively. She turned to her daughter. "Candace, darling, tell everyone about the country club membership Gilbert surprised you with." My father beamed. The same man who'd told me he couldn't help with my student loans because money was tight had joined a country club. I'd been paying $600 monthly for 3 years while he played golf. The conversation flowed around us like we were invisible. Candace discussed her redecorating plans, changing everything my mother had chosen. New furniture. New paint colors. She wanted to tear out Mama's rose garden for a meditation space. "Those old roses are diseased anyway," she said casually. My mother had nursed those roses for 15 years. Each one planted for a special occasion. My birth. Her wedding anniversary. Her mother's memory. "They're not diseased," I said firmly. "They're heritage roses. Irreplaceable." Candace waved her hand. "Everything's replaceable, sweetie. That's what Gilbert and I believe. Out with the old, in with the new." The double meaning wasn't subtle. Uncle Ashton cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we should say grace?" But Candace wasn't finished establishing her territory. Actually, Candace said, standing up like she was about to make a toast, before we eat, I have an announcement. Gilbert and I are planning to expand. We're buying the Hendersons' property next door. My mother went completely still beside me. We're going to tear down that old house and extend our backyard. Maybe put in a tennis court, Dad added proudly. The neighborhood association already approved it. The Hendersons sold? I asked, confused. Old Mr. Henderson had lived there 40 years. He'd given me peppermints every Christmas. Not sold. They're being foreclosed on, Regina said with barely concealed glee. Couldn't keep up with the new neighborhood fees. Happens to people who can't adapt. Something flickered across my mother's face. Not sadness. Something harder. Something calculated. How much are the neighborhood fees now? She asked quietly. $1,500 quarterly, Dad said. That's why this neighborhood stays exclusive. Keeps out the riffraff. He didn't even look at us when he said it, but the message was clear. We were the riffraff. The ones who couldn't afford to belong. When Lorraine and I divorced, I knew I needed to upgrade my life, Dad continued, his arm around Candace. This neighborhood, this house, it represents success. Moving forward. Not being dragged down by the past. My mother had supported him through medical school. Worked double shifts while he studied. Raised me alone while he did his residency. And this was how he described their marriage? Being dragged down? Dad, that's not fair, I began. Stephanie, don't start, he warned. You're too sensitive. Just like your mother. Always making everything about feelings instead of facts. The fact is you wouldn't be a doctor without her, I shot back. The table went silent. Candace's family exchanged glances. Uncle Ashton studied his plate. Dad's face hardened. I think maybe you two should leave. You're kicking us out? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. We just got here. We brought food. It's Thanksgiving. It's MY Thanksgiving in MY house and I won't tolerate disrespect, Dad said coldly. He was using his doctor voice, the one that brooked no argument. I've tried to include you both, but you always bring drama. We've been here 20 minutes. I shouted. We haven't done anything except exist. That's the problem, Candace said sweetly. You exist as reminders of Gilbert's past mistakes. And frankly, Stephanie, your attitude is poisoning the atmosphere. We're trying to have a family dinner. We are family, I said, my voice breaking. I'm his daughter. Or did you forget that when you erased every photo of me from this house? I'd noticed immediately. Every picture of me growing up, gone. Replaced with professional photos of Candace, Gilbert and little Jordan. Like I'd never existed. Those old photos didn't match the aesthetic, Candace said dismissively. My mother finally spoke, her voice eerily calm. Gilbert, do you remember what you promised me in the divorce? He shifted uncomfortably. We're not discussing this now. You promised Stephanie would always be welcome. You promised you'd stay her father. You promised you wouldn't let anyone make her feel unwanted. She's always welcome if she behaves appropriately, he said. Meaning what? Sit silently while your new family insults us? Watch you give her everything while pretending I don't exist. My voice cracked. I'm your daughter, Dad. Your only daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? You're being dramatic, he said. This is why we can't have a normal relationship. You're just like your mother, always playing the victim. That's when Mama stood up. Fully. Deliberately. She straightened her simple blue dress, so different from Candace's designer outfit, and picked up her purse. We'll leave, she said quietly. But first, Gilbert, I need you to understand something. What now? He sighed, exasperated. Mama pulled out a folder. Thick one. This, she said, laying it on the table. Candace laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. What's this? Divorce papers you want to rehash? Legal threats? Lorraine, you signed the settlement. You got your little payout and… Open it, Mama said. Her voice had changed. It wasn't the careful, peacekeeping tone anymore. It was steel. Dad rolled his eyes but opened the folder. His face went from annoyed to confused to pale in seconds. What is this? He whispered. Those are property deeds, Mama said calmly. Specifically, deeds to properties in Riverside Estates. This neighborhood. I looked at her, completely lost. Mama, what are you talking about? She didn't take her eyes off my father. Gilbert, do you remember my grandmother, Edna? He died when you and I were first married. You were so busy with school, you barely came to the funeral. Your grandmother? What does she… He was flipping through pages, his hands shaking slightly. Grandma Edna was a very smart woman, Mama continued. Back in the 1950s, when this area was farmland, she and her husband bought property. Lots of it. Everyone thought they were crazy, black folks buying land outside the city. But they had vision. Candace snatched the folder. This is ridiculous. These are probably fake. They're real, Uncle Ashton said quietly. He'd been watching Mama with something like awe. I remember Aunt Edna. She owned half of South County before she passed. Mama nodded. When she died, she left everything to me. Her only granddaughter. I was 19 years old, suddenly owning dozens of properties. I didn't know what to do with them. You never told me, Dad said, and for the first time he looked uncertain. You never asked about my family, Mama replied. You were too busy building your career. I managed the properties quietly. Hired a management company. The income helped pay for your medical school, our house, everything. I felt like the floor was tilting. Mama, you own property here? Not just property, she said, pulling out another document. After the divorce, I had time to focus on my investments. I started buying more. The Hendersons' house? I bought that mortgage 3 months ago when they fell behind. The room was dead silent. You're lying, Candace said, but her voice wavered. Gilbert, she's making this up. Dad was reading the documents, his face growing whiter with each page. These are real. These are… Lorraine, this says you own 17 properties in Riverside Estates. 18 now, Mama corrected. I bought the Collins place last week. They're relocating to Florida. My mind was reeling. My mother, who lived in a modest apartment in Riverside, the developing neighborhood Regina had mocked, owned property in one of the most exclusive communities in the county? But you're a nurse, Regina said stupidly. You can't afford. I'm a nurse because I love nursing, Mama said. Not because I need the money. Though the salary is excellent. I invested wisely. My properties generate over $40,000 monthly in rental income. More now with property values rising. $40,000 monthly. I was living in a cramped apartment, and my mother was basically a real estate mogul? Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. She turned to me with gentle eyes. Baby, I was waiting for the right time. I wanted you to build your own success, your own confidence. Not rely on my money. But also… She looked back at Dad. I wanted to see what kind of man your father would become without my support. And… Dad asked quietly. You became the kind of man who kicks his daughter out on Thanksgiving, she said. The kind who erases her from family photos. The kind who watches his new wife mock the woman who sacrificed everything for him. Candace was frantically reading the documents now. These can't be legal. The neighborhood association. I'm the neighborhood association, Mama said calmly. Well, the majority stakeholder. I own enough properties to control 60% of the votes. Those increased fees you're so proud of, Gilbert? I approved those. I wanted to see who in this neighborhood valued community and who valued exclusion. Uncle Ashton started laughing. He couldn't help it. Lorraine, you're a genius. I'm a woman who learned to protect herself, she corrected. Dad found his voice. You've been playing games? Manipulating the neighborhood association? Lorraine, that's strategic, she offered. Smart. Exactly what you did during our divorce when you hid assets and undervalued your practice. His mouth snapped shut. I remembered that. The divorce had been ugly. Dad claimed he was broke, struggling. Meanwhile, he'd somehow afforded this house 6 months later. Mama had accepted a modest settlement without fighting, and I'd been furious with her for not demanding more. Now I understood. She hadn't needed his money. You let me think you were struggling, Dad said. Living in that small apartment, working full-time. I like my apartment. I like my work. Unlike you, Gilbert, I don't need to display my wealth to feel valuable, Mama said. But make no mistake, I am far wealthier than you'll ever be. Candace's face was red. This is blackmail. You're trying to extort us. Extort you? Mama laughed. Sweetheart, you have nothing I want. I'm simply clarifying the power dynamics here. You've spent 3 years making my daughter feel unwelcome in what you call your house. A house, by the way, that sits on land I could purchase tomorrow if I wanted. The Johnsons own this land, Dad said weakly. Check your deed, Mama said. The Johnsons lease this land. From a holding company called EJ Properties. Care to guess what EJ stands for? Edna Jean, Uncle Ashton said, grinning widely. Your grandmother's name. Dad looked sick. You own the land under my house? I own the land under 12 houses in this neighborhood, including yours, Mama confirmed. Your mortgage is with First National Bank. I don't own that. But your land lease? That comes up for renewal in 18 months. And the renewal terms are negotiable. I was watching a masterclass in revenge. Not hot, angry revenge. Cold, calculated, devastating revenge. Candace was scrolling frantically through her phone. This can't be legal. I'm calling our lawyer. Call him, Mama said pleasantly. His name is Richard Wilkerson, correct? Nice man. He handles 3 of my property disputes. I'm sure he'll confirm everything. Candace's face went ashen. Why? Dad finally asked. His voice was small. Why didn't you tell me? During our marriage, during the divorce. Why keep it secret? Mama's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. Because I wanted to see if you'd love me without knowing. If you'd respect me for who I was, not what I had. And you did for a while. Until success made you cruel. I wasn't cruel. You erased our daughter from your home, Mama said, her voice rising for the first time. You replaced her photos like she never existed. You gave your new wife everything while Stephanie struggled with student loans you promised to help with. You brought us here today to humiliate us, to show us our place in your new hierarchy. That's not, Dad started. Did you or did you not tell me last month that you couldn't contribute to Stephanie's graduate school fund because money was tight? Mama demanded. The same month you bought a $70,000 car? I gasped. You bought a new car? Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. It's a Tesla, little Jordan, said proudly, wandering over. Daddy lets me push the buttons. Candace snatched him away. Gilbert, go play in your room. The little boy looked confused but obeyed. I felt bad for him. None of this was his fault. He was just a kid caught in adult drama. I have provided for Stephanie, Dad said defensively. Child support, college. The bare minimum required by law, Mama interrupted. You've given Candace's family everything. Gifts, trips, opportunities. You've given your daughter excuses. Regina spoke up, clearly not reading the room. Maybe if Stephanie applied herself more. Shut up, Regina, Uncle Ashton snapped. You have no idea what you're talking about. Excuse me. Regina gasped. Stephanie graduated magna cum laude, works 60-hour weeks, and pays her own rent at 28 because her father prioritizes his new family, Uncle Ashton said. What exactly do you contribute to the world besides filtered selfies? Ashton. Dad said. No, Gilbert. I've watched this long enough. Uncle Ashton stood. Lorraine, I apologize. I should have said something before. Uncle Ashton walked around the table to stand beside Mama and me. I've been watching you treat them like garbage for 3 years. I told myself it wasn't my business, that family was complicated. But this, today, kicking them out of Thanksgiving dinner while Candace's family sneers? I'm done being silent. You don't understand our situation, Dad said. I understand perfectly, Uncle Ashton replied. You got successful and forgot where you came from. Forgot who supported you. Lorraine, you're a better person than all of us combined. Candace's father, Robert, who'd been quiet until now, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all calm down. Why? Mama asked, turning to him. So you can continue enjoying your turkey while pretending you didn't participate in humiliating us? You laughed when your daughter made cracks about my neighborhood. You smiled when Gilbert dismissed his own child. Robert had the decency to look uncomfortable. I know you, Robert, Mama continued. You're VP at Morrison Financial. You approved Gilbert's mortgage application 3 years ago. How do you, Robert began. Because I review all mortgage applications for properties on my land, Mama said. I could have denied it. But I approved it because I thought maybe Gilbert would be happy here. Maybe having his dream home would make him kinder. I was wrong. The documents were spread across the table now. Property deeds, land leases, bank statements, neighborhood association bylaws. Irrefutable proof of Mama's empire. This whole time, I said slowly, you've been in control? You could have stopped all of this. Mama looked at me with sadness in her eyes. Baby, I couldn't stop his choices. I could only control my response. I wanted to see if he'd be a good father without my intervention. If he'd choose you without incentive. He didn't, I said, the words bitter. No, she agreed. He didn't. So now he faces consequences. What consequences? Candace demanded. You're going to evict us? Sue us? This is harassment. No, Mama said calmly. I'm simply going to enforce the lease terms. Your land rent increases 40% next renewal. Standard market rate for this area. If you can't afford it, you'll need to sell and relocate. Dad did quick math in his head. I could see him calculating. 40%. That's an extra $3,000 monthly. Plus the new neighborhood association fees, Mama added. This is extortion. Candace shrieked. Revenge because Gilbert moved on. This is business, Mama corrected coldly. I'm a property owner making market rate adjustments. If that's uncomfortable for you, perhaps you should have been kinder to the landlord's daughter. The words hung in the air like thunder. The Hendersons, Dad said slowly. You foreclosed on them. You're forcing out the Collins family. This isn't about us. You're destroying the whole neighborhood. No, Mama said firmly. I'm restructuring it. The Hendersons received a generous buyout. They're moving to a better house in Lakewood, which I also own, at half their current mortgage. The Collins wanted to move to Florida. I'm helping them. And the others? Dad pressed. The people being pushed out by the fees? Are being offered alternative arrangements, Mama said. Those who built this community with respect and kindness. They're getting lease renewals at reduced rates. Those who use this neighborhood as a status symbol to lord over others. She smiled. They can pay market rate or leave. Uncle Ashton whistled low. You're redistributing the neighborhood. I'm correcting an imbalance, Mama said. This place became a haven for people who valued money over humanity. I'm changing that. Diane, Candace's mother, spoke up. You can't social engineer a neighborhood. The property values. We'll be fine, Mama said. I've already had 3 families express interest in purchasing homes here at above market rates. Good families. Diverse families. Families who value community. You're replacing us, Regina said. I'm making room for better neighbors, Mama corrected. If you happen to be displaced in the process, perhaps that's karma. I was seeing my mother in an entirely new light. She wasn't the quiet, accommodating woman who'd accepted Dad's cruelty without fighting. She was strategic, patient, powerful. How long? I asked. How long have you been planning this? Since the divorce, she admitted. I knew Gilbert would eventually show his true colors. I prepared for every possibility. Even this. I gestured at the chaotic table. Even Thanksgiving? Especially this, she said. I knew Candace would push eventually. Demand I be excluded or humiliated. I waited for her to cross a line she couldn't uncross. Dad sat down heavily, his face in his hands. Lorraine, please. We can work this out. I'll talk to Candace. We'll make room for Stephanie. It's too late, Mama said quietly. You had 3 years to make room for your daughter. You chose not to. You chose a woman who demanded you erase your past. You chose comfort over character. I love Stephanie, Dad said, and his voice broke. She's my daughter. I never stopped. Love isn't just words, Gilbert, I said, finding my voice. Love is action. You chose to help pay for Candace's sister's wedding instead of my student loans. You chose to take her family to Aruba instead of visiting me when I was hospitalized last year. His head snapped up. You were hospitalized? When? Last February, I said. Appendicitis. Emergency surgery. I called you. You said you were busy with a medical conference. He was in Miami with us, Regina said quietly, finally looking ashamed. At the wedding. I didn't know it was serious, Dad whispered. You didn't say. I shouldn't have to beg my father to care if I live or die, I said, tears streaming down my face now. I called you from the hospital, scared and alone, and you chose them over me. Uncle Ashton pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, baby girl. I should have been there. You were in Seattle for work, I said. You sent flowers. You called every day during recovery. You acted like family. The contrast was clear. Uncle Ashton, who had no obligation to me, had shown more care than my own father. Candace tried one more time. Gilbert provided for you. He's a good father. He's a bank account, I said harshly. Not a father. Fathers show up. Fathers remember their children exist. Fathers don't let their new wives erase every trace of their daughters. I want those photos back up, Dad said suddenly. Candace, tomorrow we're putting Stephanie's pictures back. No, I said. Don't do it because Mama has leverage. Do it because you want to. And we both know you don't. The truth silenced him. Mama gathered her documents. The lease renewal notice will arrive in 60 days. You'll have 18 months to decide, pay the new rate or sell. Where will we go? Candace whispered. That's not my concern, Mama said. You made your choices. Now face them. We walked toward the door, Uncle Ashton carrying Mama's coat. The Thanksgiving dinner sat untouched on the table, growing cold like the relationships around it. Lorraine, wait, Dad said, standing. Please. Can we talk? Privately. Mama paused. For a moment I thought she might relent. But then she looked at me, at my tear-stained face, my hunched shoulders, the visible pain of being rejected by my father, and her expression hardened. We're done talking, Gilbert. We talked when you hid assets during the divorce. We talked when you missed Stephanie's college graduation. We talked when you forgot her birthday 2 years running. Every conversation ends the same way. You make promises you don't keep. I can change, he pleaded. I'll do better. Just don't do this to my family. Your family. Mama's voice was ice. Stephanie is your family. He was always your family. But you chose a new one and threw her away like trash. Little Jordan peeked around the corner, confused by the adult shouting. He saw me crying and walked over slowly. Why are you sad? He asked innocently. I knelt down to his level, wiping my tears. Sometimes grown-ups hurt each other's feelings, buddy. It's not your fault. Are you my sister? He asked. Daddy has your picture in his office. He told me you were special. My heart cracked. Dad had kept one photo, hidden away where Candace wouldn't see. I am your sister, I said gently. And maybe someday when you're bigger we can be friends. But right now I need to leave. Because Mommy was mean? He asked. The room froze. Gilbert, go to your room now, Candace said sharply. But she said you were mean to the old lady and that's why she gets to leave, the little boy said, confused. I heard you talking this morning. Candace had planned this. The humiliation, the exclusion. She'd discussed it beforehand. Dad had known. You knew, I said to Dad. You knew she was going to do this today. His silence was confirmation. You're a coward, Uncle Ashton said. A pathetic, weak coward. We left. The cold November air hit my face as we walked to Mama's car. A modest Honda she'd driven for years, despite having the money for something flashy. We sat in the car for a moment, none of us speaking. Then Mama started laughing. Not bitter laughter. Genuine, relieved laughter. Mama, I said uncertainly. I've been carrying that folder for 3 years, she said. Waiting for the right moment. The perfect moment. And today, baby, it was perfect. Uncle Ashton laughed too. Lorraine, you're terrifying. Remind me never to cross you. You won't, she said warmly. Is your family. Real family. I was still processing everything. Mama, why didn't you tell me? About the money, the properties, any of it. She turned to me, taking my hands. Because I needed you to become strong on your own. If you'd known I had money, you might have relied on it instead of building your career. You might have felt entitled instead of driven. I wanted you to know your worth had nothing to do with wealth. I thought we were struggling, I whispered. I've been so worried about you. I know, baby. And I'm sorry. But look at you, you're successful, independent, strong. You did that yourself. Now. She smiled. Now you know you have a safety net. Not because you need it, but because you've earned it. She pulled out another document. This is a trust fund. $2 million. It's been growing since you were born. It's yours. I couldn't breathe. Mama. Your graduate school is paid for. Your student loans are cleared. I paid them off last month. And I'm transferring 3 properties to your name. You're a property owner now, baby. Build your empire. I started crying again, but this time from overwhelming love. I don't deserve. You deserve everything, she said fiercely. You're kind, hardworking, brilliant. You deserved a father who saw that. Since he doesn't, I'll make sure you never doubt your value again. Uncle Ashton raised an imaginary glass. To Lorraine, the baddest woman in 3 counties. We laughed together, the 3 of us. Real family. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Please come back. Let's talk. I'm sorry. I showed Mama. She read it and shrugged. Your choice, baby. Always your choice. I thought about it. About the years of feeling unwanted. About the hospital, the missed birthdays, the erased photos. About little Jordan, who seemed sweet but lived with poison. I typed back. I hope someday you understand what you lost. But I'm done begging for crumbs from your table. I have my own table now. And everyone's welcome, except those who make others feel worthless. I hit send. Mama drove us to her apartment. Our apartment now, she said. We'd have Thanksgiving there. Order Chinese food. Laugh until we cried. Plan our future. As we pulled away, I saw Dad standing in his doorway watching us leave. He looked small. Defeated. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt free.